Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the wild, weird, and wacky world of the Word. And let me tell you, we have some really wild and weird and wacky stuff happening in our lessons for this coming Sunday, especially the one from the Gospel of John. It's the one that has the John 3:16 imprint on it. Yeah, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. Yeah, we all know that scripture. And the important thing is to look at all the things around it, because John uses a lot of biblical images in describing who Jesus is. He is the one who was lifted up. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, he said, just as Moses lifted up the serpent, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Now, who was lifted up on the cross? It was Jesus, yeah. And the serpent, what's that all about? You go back to Numbers 21, and you have to remember that's when the people were wandering in the wilderness, and they started grumbling against Moses and God, and God sent all these poisonous snakes into the region so that the people would be bitten by them and died because they were being so disobedient and rebellious. And the people cried out to Moses, and Moses said, Lord, do something. And God told Moses to make a copper or a bronze or fiery. I mean, the word is translated a lot of different ways, but fiery serpent. Fashion it onto a pole, stick it in the ground, with that serpent held high, lift it up, and as the people looked at it, they would be healed. Yeah, interesting thing, but lift it up. In the Greek that John uses in his gospel, that word for lifted up also means exalted. The exact same word, lift up, exalt. All right. Yeah, kind of interesting, isn't it? But what's even more interesting is when you go to a passage a little bit later in 1 Kings 18, verse 4, we hear this talk of a bronze serpent that King Hezekiah, who was supposedly the one who brought about a lot of religious reforms, good reforms within Israel. He's smashing this thing to bits. It was part of the temple decor. They had it sitting there because supposedly it was the very same bronze, copper, fiery serpent, however you want to translate it, that Moses had used in the wilderness. And why did he smash it? Along with a lot of other iconic things that were in the temple. It was because he felt the people were now worshiping those things as idols, just as some of the people from other cultures and traditions around them and other religions were worshiping idols. So he did a thorough sweep through and had a lot of these things smashed and burned. Wow, this is absolutely nuts. It's crazy, how all this can happen. And yet, there it is. The gospel writer John, using this portion of his gospel to show how Jesus said, hey, look, as Jesus is lifted up on the cross, as Jesus is exalted, just like Moses did with that bronze snake way back then, so people will come to life. And for the Gospel of John, it wasn't just living and being healed from a bunch of snake bites. It's being healed by the ultimate enemy, who we often see as the snake in Scripture. Yep, the devil and death. There's all kind of nuances that are going on in our Scripture passages for this coming Sunday. But all through the Bible, you find things like this. So when you look at it and you see things happening that you go, wait a minute, that's making some sort of reference to an Old Testament thing, look it up and study it, because there's some really cool stuff there that kind of helps bring it all together for us in our faith. Jesus lifted up, exalted, And that's exactly what we do when we gather once again. Right now we're in the Lenten season. We're making our journey toward the cross. But we will gather at the cross on Easter Sunday, an empty cross, because there's also an empty tomb. Jesus is exalted. Okay, God's blessings be with you. Enjoy your day and get outside right now if you live in my area, my neck of the woods, because there's about 4 or 5 inches of snow, heavy wet snow, that needs to be shoveled off your sidewalk. God's blessings be with you.